and welcome to another episode of Comic Fridays. We missed last week due to unfortunate technical problems, but we're back now, so let's get to it. We're going to start this week with another drawing tutorial, this time on how to draw hands. When I'm reading a lot of comics, especially comics by artists who don't seem to have enough confidence in their own abilities yet, I don't see many hands being drawn. Hands are something that a lot of artists spend years trying to master, but it doesn't have to be like that. You can learn how to draw basic hand shapes for your comics in just an hour or two of practicing. Here's how to do it. Start by drawing a rhombus, which is basically a slanted rectangle. Add another rhombus to one end of this, but make sure the sides are not parallel to the first rhombus. This is to ensure that you don't end up with a hand where the fingers are held rigid. People don't hold their fingers rigidly straight up from their palms unless there's something wrong or they're reaching for something. So keep your lines at an angle to one another to ensure the hand looks more realistic. Now draw 3 lines through this second rhombus to denote the fingers. Draw a square in the lower rhombus on either the lower left or lower right side depending on whether you're drawing a left or right hand. Draw a curve off from the top side of this square and join the end of the curve to the midpoint on the outermost side of the square. Now you have your basic hand sketch. Tidy up the lines with some smooth curves to finish off your hand, and remember when drawing the fingers, the second finger is longer than the first and third fingers, and the fourth finger is smaller than all the others. Once you're done with your sketch, you can ink it up to finish off with your final hand drawing. If there are any other tutorials you would like to see covered in later episodes, please leave a comment here on YouTube or email comicfridays@zoerobinson.com. Moving on to news, another photo from the set of the upcoming Judge Dredd movie has been released, this time showing a full-length shot of Judge Dredd himself. This brought about the usual round of commentary on the costume, which many die-hard fans are claiming is a massive departure from the look of Dredd in 2000 AD. Personally, I think it's a rather faithful look at Dredd from the early years of the comic, when his shoulder pads were far smaller and more like what a real person would wear. I like what I've seen of these pictures, and apparently Judge Dredd co-creator John Wagner liked what he saw when he was given an early screening, so I think we're in for a treat. Moving across the Atlantic for a moment, DC Comics has decided that rebooting its entire universe wasn't quite enough. So now, on the anniversary of the New 52 relaunch, it is releasing an entire month's worth of zero-issue comics. I can't be alone in thinking this is a gimmick, which is a little sad, but if you're interested in giving a new character from DC a try, this month of standalone issues is a pretty good time to do it. Sticking with DC for a moment, Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern, has been reintroduced as a young gay man in DC's new Earth 2 comic, which depicts several Golden Age characters as young heroes. Scott coming out of the closet puts an end to the speculation that Batman was about to be outed, and I'll let you make your own minds up about whether Batman staying straight is a good, bad or indifferent thing. Moving on to the internet, an argument of sorts broke out last night when Eric Larson of Savage Dragon and Image Comics fame came into a Twitter discussion about creator-owned characters and accused Neil Gaiman of gloating over stealing from Todd McFarlane. Larson was referring to Gaiman's case against Image Comics over the ownership of the Angela character from Image's Spawn. Gaiman's response was simply to ask, "You really haven't been following any of the case, have you?" This little spat only serves as a reminder to both established and upcoming artists that when you argue on the internet, everyone can watch you. So think carefully about what you say in case it ends up being discussed ad nauseum on comic news shows. Finally, we come to Malaysia, where political cartoons have been banned in the run-up to the Malaysian general election. One artist, Zulkifli Anwar Haq, who goes by the far more pronounceable alias Zunar, has decided this ban just isn't for him. Asking who is the Electoral Commission to decide whether political cartoons are serious or not serious, satire or not, Zunar has announced his intention to ignore the legislation and carry on as normal. No doubt betting shops all over the world are taking odds on how long it is before he is arrested. What do you think of Malaysia's ban on political cartoons? Is it a good way of preventing defamation, or is it another clampdown on free speech? Let us know in the comments. Moving on to comic reviews, this week sees the release of issue 1786 of 2000 AD. Here we find that Justice Department is starting to learn how to deal with the Dark Judges escaping from solitary confinement, as Fear, Fire and Mortis complain about how judges keep shooting any corpses they possess, rendering the bodies useless before the Dark Judges can fully corporealise. I love little touches like this. They make Mega City 1 feel like a real place with real people who can change and grow. This week's episode of Durham Red felt more like character development than actual plot development, which would be fine if the character wasn't already 20 years old. I get that this is a story about her first mission, but spending the whole episode showing that she's not only impulsive, but also annoyingly stubborn, just seemed unnecessary. Even Carl Sosquera's fantastic arc couldn't save what felt very much like filler. The third story from 2018 that I want to discuss this week is Nikolai Dante. This swashbuckling Russian rogue of the 27th century is back for his final story, ending a saga that has run for the last 15 years. I've been reading Dante since his introduction in the Romanov dynasty way back in the late 1990s, and I have to say, it's been a hell of a journey. Strong writing from Robbie Morrison is matched by superb artwork from Simon Fraser. These are Dante's co-creators, and the overall impression is simple genius. This one's going to be worth the cover price on its own. 2000 AD issue 1786 is available now in print in the UK and in digital download form from the 2000 AD website. From the web, we have Javin Baxter's Yakage Force. This is a Western manga sci-fi drama with 12 chapters available online and several in print also. Each chapter contains around 17 pages, so you can breeze through this one in an afternoon, and that's no bad thing. Although sometimes the story slows down, with entire pages being given over to superfluous dialogue, for the most part the writing has a real sense of emotion to it. The stark black and white artwork alternates with the manga-style cross-hatching to create a sense of depth to the visuals. The overall impression is of a nicely done comic that's well worth a look. Yakage Force can be found at yakageforce.co.uk, and if you can't spell that, there's a link in the description box below. Sticking with the web, we come to Epic Fail, a fantasy adventure in the traditional Dungeons & Dragons mode. Although there are only 64 pages of story available online and the comic has been running since 2009, what is here shows art that rapidly develops in quality and effective writing. I enjoyed what I saw here. The characters have strong personalities and each one is easily identifiable thanks to good design. Although it's another one you can read in an afternoon to get caught up, it's time worth spending. Epic Fail can be found at epicfail.zephyr.net, and as usual there's a link in the description bar below if you need it. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Comic Fridays. Don't forget to click the like button, share this with your comic loving friends, and click the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Until next week, I've been Zoe Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching a video, and I'll see you next time.